Welcome to segment two, SprintCarLimited.com podcast presented by Wicked Brands. Joins us on the phone is Kevin Newton, who is the organizer and the grand poobah of the Maverick Sprint Car Series out of Indiana. They've run one race, so I guess inaugural season might be a stretch, but they're planning more in the future. Kevin, how you doing?
Fabulous. Also unbelievable. And they also call me El Patron at the Maverick Series.
Al Patron.
Yeah, I think it's Spanish for the boss.
Oh, okay.
I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not sure, but it sounds cool.
Yeah, like El Capitan.
Yes, there you go.
So, well, Kevin, obviously you've been in the news. Had the Maverick Sprint Car Series is something you, I guess, helped put together. And before we get too deep into it, how did it come together, and what made you want to get involved with the promoting side with the Spicers?
Well, when I tell you, you have to promise that you won't tell anybody what I told you.
Okay.
and anybody that hears this has to promise they won't tell anybody either. So here's the secret. I am extremely lazy and somewhat prideful. And because of that, I don't like driving 5 hours to go race somewhere.
Okay.
So maybe the word's not prideful, it's selfish. Let's go with selfish. I think selfish would describe the situation more accurately. To go race right now in Indiana where I live, I've got to go west. The closest I could go race with a wind sprint car, the 410 in it, is west about 3.5 hours, one way.
Okay.
Now, I'm sure a lot of guys are like, well, that's nothing. That's nothing. I travel 12 hours. Oh, cool, man. I'm good. Yeah, thank you for doing that, and thank you for supporting whatever series that would be. That's amazing. But remember, we're talking about Kevin, not you. And Kevin's 46 years old, hasn't raced for 24 years, and I'm not going to be a professional race car driver. That's not a dream of mine. That's past 24 years ago. And I want to do this it's a hobby. It's just a hobby for me, and I enjoy sprint cars, and I had a chance to get back involved in the sport and go race and have some fun. We'll talk about that momentarily, I'm sure, how that happened. But just to be fully transparent, it's just, man, I tell you, if you want to go race with a strong group of cars, for us, it's 4 or 5 hour one-way drive for one night. So that's a 10-hour trip of driving to just go race around on a dirt oval somewhere in the middle of nowhere. That's kind of what dirt racing is, but I don't love it that much to do that 40 times a year. That much driving. Because for me, and I think we would all agree with this, time and money trade equally. Usually if you got a ton of time, you don't have a lot of money. If you got a ton of money, you don't have a lot of time. So 10 hours of driving or going back and forth to racetracks is an asset that's being burned in a way which is not highly profitable, and it's fleeting. Our time is running out and we don't have much of it. So this is sit there behind the windshield driving one way to turn some laps. Maybe you might have totally 7 minutes a night of throttle time. If you time how much time your sprint car laps, as far as the lap times and number of laps on a racetrack, you might be racing for 7 minutes total. And for 10 hours of driving, it's ludicrous. So anyway, I don't want to blow about that any longer. But that's the main reason is I can go race an hour away, come home, and be home by midnight instead of 5 o'clock in the morning, and your next day is just shot. Now, I'll be transparent. Some people may be listening to this, and they may know me, and they'll say, that stinking guy doesn't drive anything. He has a team of people who drive his semi out to the racetracks. He flies his jet to the race. And that's true, I do. I do fly to the racetracks, but why burn $3,000 of jet fuel to go race, get a car, drive to the racetrack, drive back to the airport, get back in my plane, fly back home, drive home from the airport? That's even more of a grind. I've been doing that all season.
Well, I can sympathize with the time part, because as a reporter, when I go to these races now, let's say it's not in central Pennsylvania where I'm based, I want to fly now instead of drive, because I burn 7-8 hours, one way where I could be writing or doing something else on a plane. So I totally understand that. Now, I'm not going to start a series, but a little background on you. What is your background in sprint car racing? What were you? I mean, you're obviously, it sounds like you're a driver. Uh, it's what's the history here behind what you've been
Yeah,
doing with racing?
I'll do it as fast as I can. When I was 12 years old, I spent the night with a friend from school, and he raced quarter midgets. I was not aware of that, and his name was Greg Dillian. And I'm like, we went racing that night. It was a Friday night, and his dad took him racing, and we went racing. He had some brothers that raced also. I'm like, hey, he's like, hey, Kevin, we're going to go racing. I'm like, oh, what's that? I mean, I'm a 12-year-old. I've never been exposed to it. So we went to the quarter midget track. I watched him race. That's so cool. That's so cool. I got to have one of those. I was like, well, home to my dad. You got to get a quarter midget. He's like, what's a quarter midget? Well, a year later, we were racing quarter midgets. I spent 3 years racing quarter midgets and won a ton of races, local, regional races, national races, and never really ran a series other than the local track. I didn't travel like a lot of kids do these days. I didn't do any of that. And then I spent 3 years in modified midgets. The year Jason Myers won the national MMA 250 championship, I was leading that series the entire season. So if you remember Jason Myers, the outlaw driver, also like the car owner of 14 car. We were both number 14 at the time, and we were about the same age. And we went down to Texas, Irvin, Texas, for the national championship race. And I think he ended up winning, and I ended up 7th or something. It doesn't matter. After that race, I was still leading the points. Unfortunately, really fortunately, I got a sprint car ride when I got back to Indiana. And that ride was with Bill Biddle. Bill Biddle owned a construction company here locally in Terre Haute called Hendon Construction. And it was Hendon cars, the 26 car, the 62 car, have had a ton of recognizable drivers: Jay Drake, Tracy Hines, Brian Hayden, Jack Hewitt. The list goes on and on. I was his first driver. I was 15 at the time. So he started that team for me, and we raced for a while. And I was a 15-year-old kid, and they threw me out with the USAC guys racing. And I did okay. I was in the top 10, qualified fast on a few times back then in that car. That towards the end of that season, some local races. And I think my second race out was at Terre Haute, which is for most people, they've been racing for decades and they're scared of that joint. I was 15 racing there. And we did fine. Just I wasn't giving him what he wanted. He wanted to win races, which I understand. If I invested the kind of money as we do today, like he did, you want to win races. You want to see a return on your investment. And I wasn't that guy. I was a 15-year-old kid. He's racing a 250, 45 horsepower, single cylinder micro midget. They threw in an 800 horsepower non-wing sprint car with USAC killers racing against you. So it was a daunting task to think I was going to go out and start winning races. We competed aggressively. We competed. We definitely weren't race winning capable at that point. Not with me anyway. So anyway, I got a midget ride after that and drove a car for George Tucker. George Tucker was a mechanic for Raleigh Hemling when Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart drove for Raleigh back in the day. And then Raleigh sold his equipment, and George bought some of it, and I went and drove for George. And we did pretty good racing together. It was a very shoestring budget, and we ran some Neymar races and some USAC shows, and nothing overwhelmingly amazing, but top 4, top 5s. I think I won a couple of Neymar races that first stint there. And I ran midgets for 2 more years, ended up winning the Neymar's midget championship in '99. Our boy Matt Westfall, if you're familiar with him, that guy won it in '98, the year before that, and I won it the following season. Then I got recruited to go race pavement wing sprint cars with the Auto Value Super Sprint Series on pavement. I've never raced a sprint car with a wing, and I definitely never raced a sprint car on pavement. So putting those two things together was a real interesting combination. But I won a ton of races that year, and world records for lap times and track records for lap times, of course. And that was a super cool experience. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed that. And we're working on some wing cars here for pavement currently as we speak. for next season to have some fun with that. I really love that racing. It was super fun and enjoyable, and I love the people who ran those series. Guys like Tom Fedua and Gary Fedua, it's legends up in Michigan, and Jason Blonde. There's a ton of guys who are super cool, and they're still racing today. And Jason Blonde's won a ton of championships in that series, and I think he won this last season. They call it the must-see sprint car series or something like that currently, I believe. And but anyway, that's also very far away from us. It's like to go to Michigan and race is a good 6-hour haul one way. So I did that as a kid, but also I was driving for somebody else, so it was a little bit easier. But that being said, then I quit racing. I got fired from my ride in 2003. Actually, before that, I got hired by the Law Brothers, a 77 non-wing car here. It's kind of legendary in our state, local level, and also the USAC level in the regional area. And I went and drove for them for a season. And I got hired back to go drive that wing car on pavement for one more season in 03, I believe it was. And then I got let go after the Little 500. And we got a little altercation in the pit area after the race, and I was let go. And I haven't raced since until this last season, that being 2022, going back to the friend who got me involved with racing, Greg. His son, Carson, is racing a 305 car, and I started sponsoring their car, and Carson dared me to come race one day with him, or come to those mechanic races.
Oh, okay.
And I went, and he's like, I bet you can't go faster, man. I'm like, kid, oh man, stop it. If I go faster than you, I'm racing your car next year. Of course, I went faster than he did. So we bought a little 305. Really, it was for him, a backup car, and I drove it a few times. I won some races out of the gate, and that was really fun. The cool thing about that 305 series, it's an Indiana IMSA Race Sabers winged 305 sprint car series, and it's right here in my backyard. So that was really fun. But it's a 305, and they're only 450 horse or so, and I remember what the 800 plus horsepower motor was like, and we need to get a 410 on one of these things and go race. So we did, but then we had traveled so far. I'm like, well, this is kind of silly. Anyway, that's how we got here, Jeremy. All that to get here to say, for me, it's a hobby, and I've had several drivers drive this year to help our team escalate on the driving and racing side. Parker Price Miller, Hunter Schoenberg driven, Kevin Thomas Jr., Jake Swanson, Logan Seavey, and they all have unique attributes that have added to our team and our organization as a race team as we continue to grow that part of it. But for me personally, I'm probably not going to travel with an all-star series personally, or the Outlaws. I'll go run those races if they're close. And my team may be traveling those series. But for me as a racer, and I still enjoy racing, I'm not going to set the world on fire, but I enjoy going to the racetrack and going around circles. As I said, maybe I'm selfish, but I figured the money it costs us to go race, for me, a drop of the door is about $7,000 a night. And I figured, doing the math, I could just start my own series, pay for the series just so I can go race, and I'm sure I can get 4 or 5 guys to show up and race with me. And the first race, I called around, asked some folks, and we got 50 cars there, basically 49 cars. I'm going to call it 50 for our podcast. And I thought that was great. I've had so much interest and so many people reaching out since then that are excited about the way it pays out in the B mains, the lack of having a bunch of support series, the clogging at the night and slowing it down. One of our goals is to be out there at least in 4 hours. The very longest the night should be is 4 hours. Because the audience doesn't want to sit there any longer than about 3. That's probably too long. So I took all this, and I'll tell you how this happened. I know you asked me. I know I'm talking too much, but
that's okay.
I want to get all out for you. Jill Spiker reached out to me via email asking if I'd be interested in sponsoring like a billboard sponsorship at the racetrack at Lincoln Park.
Right.
Well, if you don't know, or if you listeners don't know, I operate a roofing company across the country called Honest Abe Roofing, America's reliable roofer. With that being said, she's seen our race cars at her racetrack racing, and she saw us be a sponsorship with USAC and other series around. And she's like, well, maybe this guy would be interested in putting the billboard and sponsoring the racetrack. So she sends out an email, hey, would you be interested in spending like $500 to put a billboard up? Real quick, promoters, if any promoters are listening to this, do not insult somebody. This is why no one has the sponsorship for racetracks, or very little. You're asking for too little. Asking a guy who runs a business, like I'm not a large business, we know $500 is not a bargain. That's a waste of money. $500 is not going to have an ROI attached to it. A $500 billboard, say across a dirt track, is 300 yards away from the audience. You rarely see it. It's probably covered in dirt by that point in time.
Yeah.
Isn't going to do anything. So you need to ask for more and give more. And like, if you want 50, like I'd be asking for 50K. So I just told her, instead of insulting her and saying no and brushing her off, I said, here's what I'll do, Jill. I'll sponsor the whole entire track. We're going to rename it, and it's going to be my racetrack. And with that being said, I also want to start a 410 wing series. She's like, are you kidding?
No. Well, I would have said the same thing.
So, long story short, I met with them a few days later at lunch, and after about an hour-long lunch, we had it all hashed out. And that chick, Jill, Spiker, and Joe, those two folks are some of the hardest working people I've met. And I haven't met everybody in the world, but definitely in the racing community. I've never met any other promoters. I do know some, but I haven't interacted with them like I've interacted with the Spikers. And that chick there is a go-getting worker. Man, she's a beast. And all the credit goes to Jill. She got all the insurance and the EINs, and she pulled it all together, got them taken care of, worked with our marketing team to create logos and all that stuff it takes in the background, the My Race Pass stuff. And I'm not sure what that takes, but it does take time. We talked about time earlier today, and she just knocked it out. And all of a sudden we had a race. I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. And she's like, how about the 6th? I'm like, done. And now, the only thing that didn't work out well for us was it got cold here. It was a cold night, and it was rainy that day. And so that was unfortunate for the crowd. The crowd was, if you saw the high limit race at Putnamville, the crowd was even lackluster there, I would say. What I saw, I was out of town, so I didn't go. But from the video I saw, I would say our crowd was about half that size, which is not good either. And I don't know what the head count was. Whatever it was, they were super excited about the outcome as promoters and as track operators, which is good because we need that to keep moving forward. So we're excited about next season. And Jeremy, I'm sorry for talking so much, but I had to get that out. That's how my life has worked in racing, and that's how I got to where we're at today. It didn't take much to do it. It just takes money and effort. It's people who are aligned with the same vision. You can see the possibility, because there's a huge segment of racing in the wing world and of people who want to race wings who are too scared to go run against the Outlaws or the All-Stars or even venture into Pennsylvania because they don't think they can compete. And they have the same equipment, but their minds aren't tuned up to think they can do it. So a series like ours, I think, is a big need in the community across the country to be able to give people a chance to come race for a fair amount of money. I think we'll have the highest paying weekly show in the country is our goal. And to get those guys to come race. Like Cale Thomas from the first race, and that kid's been grinding his whole career, and he comes out and he tells me, man, that's the biggest purse I've ever won. It was $6,000, and I guess that's a lot of money, and that's great. And we pay deep too, $1,000 for 10th, and I think $600 to start, and $250 for the B main. So, and if you can make sense as a racer to go race and at least break even, I think you feel pretty good, and that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, it's interesting for people who don't know that the car you're referring to is the yellow and blue 16. Parker Price Miller drove it. It was fast too. Kevin Thomas Jr., Logan Seavey, and people asked me, oh, that car shows up. They didn't know who, because it was new for them to see that car on a stage with high limit. So just to clear that up. So, okay. How surprised were you? Now, I was at Lincoln Park for the high limit race. How surprised were you when you had your race to get 4950 cars in the pit area for your first event? Now, granted, 6,000 is pretty good, but still 49-50 cars, that's a lot.
I guessed it'd be 35. I talked to a lot of drivers and teams ahead of this, asking for their help to come, because the Spikers thought we'd only get 20. I was like, Jill, come on, dog. We're gonna get more. We're gonna get more than 20. Uncle Kev's here, and the I think that's what we're talking about. This is what's missing. Is those same guys? Look at the entry list to our race, and look at the high limit race. None of those guys, very few of those guys showed up.
Right.
To the high limit race. Very few of them. And it goes back to what I said. They don't think they can win. And it's a mental problem. They see Rico, they see Kyle Larson. Like me, I want to go out and crash him. Like, Rico's here? Cool. Where's he at? I'm going to crash his ass. Just so I can get some airtime. Yeah, that crash is brought to you by On State Roofing, America's reliable roofer. Just kidding, Rico. But, just seriously, I think it's a great thing to go race with those guys, but other people see it as a bad thing. So if that's the case, let's give these guys a chance to go race for good money, make sense in racing, and have confidence that they can make the race. They don't have confidence they can make that race, the high limit show. If you don't make the race a high limit show, like, you're broke. And that night is wasted. And I think it doesn't pay that great to be made. It might pay $200, and that's not great for anybody. I'm not saying we're paying more, but we had the same problem in our deal. I mean, 49 cars, only 22 made the show. A lot of guys went home. Hell, I blew an $80,000 motor qualifying.
Oh.
So I didn't even get a chance to race my own damn race. I had 4 cars there. 3 of them went home. Kevin Thomas didn't make it. Mine broke, and Carson, my friend's son, he didn't make the show. Only guy that made the show was Logan Seavey.
So you run. What drew me to this thing was, first off, that's wingless country. That's non-wing country.
Yeah,
it takes some stones to start a winged sprint car series in Indiana. Is it just something you like wings better, or do you think the market is thirsting for winged racing in Indiana because the All-Stars really didn't go there?
Yeah.
Maybe once in a while they did, but is that something a need? And also, is it to expose some non-wing guys to winged racing?
Jeremy, I think you hit it right in the head. There's perhaps a 3-headed beast there for me. The first part's my selfishness, right? I want to go race locally.
Of course.
To answer that question, like, just go race non-wing, Kev. I don't like non-wing racing. I love to watch it. I love to watch it. Love it. I love to watch. Those guys are nuts, and that's the problem. Those guys are nuts. You don't want to race against Kevin Thomas without wing on. He's nuts. Robert Ballou, he cray-cray. And that's awesome, and the fans love those guys. And I do too. But my racing style, my racecraft is a lot like Logan Seavey. Now, I'm not saying I like Logan Seavey. That guy's amazing. But he drives the car very straight.
Yeah.
My pavement experience, and I have a lot of pavement experience, is very, very right front dominant. And wing racing leans more that direction. You're not pitching the car backwards at the flag stand. Racing, looking over the arm guard in the wing car. That's a non-wing race style, and I don't like it.
Okay.
So I'm slow in a non-wing car because of my style. I'm not comfortable in that position. So, and I go races still. I've got 4 of them sitting here. We go race, and our cars are fast. Kevin ran second in our car at Hopstad. We've competed. They're quick. So we got the right stuff, right people working on them. But I go out and run. I struggle to make a feature at the USAC show. So I just don't have that, and my skill is not honed for that, and I can admit that. I'm a big boy. I'm safer. I feel safer in a wing car. They're a lot faster, but I feel safer in the wing car, racing neck to neck with somebody, opposed to a non-wing car. So that's the first part, the safety. Then I'm confident. I'm a big believer in the streaming and the content itself. Now, non-wing racing is very exciting to watch, but the appetite, it seems to me, based on what little research I've done, which wasn't really little, but is wing racing pulls more audience in the grandstands and on streaming content.
I agree with
So
that.
if the eyeballs, if you're going to build a business, are you going to put it out in the woods if it's a fast food place, or find a busy intersection?
Obviously, the intersection.
Let's talk about a billboard. Billboard. You want to put it out in the country, or do you want to put it on a busy intersection for a billboard? Well, busy intersection. So my business model is to get in front of consumers so I can provide them roofing services across this country. Well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to put my billboard in the busiest intersection I could. And right now, that's wing racing when it comes to racing on dirt. So that's the other part of it. And then you mentioned the non-wing guys. There's a big part of the society here locally who just want a chance to go race wing cars, and they know they're not going to pop into a high limit race and get in the feature. I'm not saying they couldn't, but their belief is personally they can't do it because they race non-wing cars. They don't have the time and the mechanical knowledge behind them to go compete with Kyle Larson. They may have a skill, but if the car is not good enough, they can't. They won't be good enough. I'm sorry. And you have all those things working together. And this gives them an opportunity to go race locally and learn and hone in those skills. That way, when the All-Stars or whatever happens with those guys in the future, sounds like that's a done deal, and the High Limit and All-Stars are all going to be together. So when that series rolls through or the Outlaws roll through, these guys will now have some skill set and some confidence to go race with those guys. So that's the other part.
Well, you kind of led into my next question. Does this series fill a void? I mean, we hear so much about if everything goes the way people expect, regional series will be gone, because the All-Stars basically is Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, kind of the Northeast area. Whereas you're only as strong as your regional programs, and the series that roll through these areas depend on guys to come run with them when they roll through. Does this fill that void of having a regional series?
Yeah. You keep in mind, I earn zero. This is a suck on revenue for me. This is not something that earns money for me. This is a hobby. The series. I'm paying for the series. I'm paying for the purse for them to come race. But really, for I can go race. So, but yes, with that being said, there's a reason. If you and I were team members and we owned a national touring wing series, would we really want to stop in Indiana when we're just what local people are we going to pull to come race with our guys?
No, not many.
Very few.
Very few.
So hopefully we pull guys from Ohio into Indiana. So we go to Lawrenceburg. The Outlaws go to Lawrenceburg. Okay, that makes sense. They pull some guys from Ohio. But that car count was like 27, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So that's pretty low. They went to Hopstad. I think you had Ballou, you had Leary, Bacon, and maybe a couple other non-wing guys who showed up at Hopstad, because Hopstad's a different beast all in itself. But still, it wasn't the same car count they got when they went to Pennsylvania. 54 cars,
right,
stupid for that 4-row race. It was in the 30s. But there's very few local guys. They just pulled the guys from Illinois over, pulled some guys up from Kentucky who raced in different 360 series. There's like Short was in there. These are local guys from Illinois who raced wing cars with MOA, and other Power Eye guys came over. But once again, they're pulling from afar. They weren't pulling from local Indiana for car count.
Right.
So I believe, and I haven't spoke to any national series. I know it seems like some feathers have been ruffled, but they should be thanking me, calling me, wanting to work with us on creating our series, strengthening our series. That way, when their series roll through, it improves their race to where it increases the excitement for the fans. Because our whole goal is to create a culture that highlights our local drivers in the wing and make them heroes. And then if Cale Thomas becomes a hero of the Maverick Series and the fans love him and they learn how to get first of all, our guys have to learn. Next year, if I get a chance to speak to them in drivers' meetings, they have to know the people who pay for this are the people in the grandstands. We have to put a show on. We have to be some showmen. You have to work on your showmanship.
Okay.
And if we can put a better show on, and I don't care what that is, if you do donuts after the race, or maybe we do some pursuit races, we'll figure that out. And maybe you have to get some rivalry built into the deal. Whatever, but we have to get some fan favorites built in the deal. So when the Outlaws come, if they do come, or whoever, and our guys go race with them, like our core fans with our series are cheering on our guys against those outlaw fellas, like just like you see the Pennsylvania posse, that
Right.
same type of vibe that and you got in your state. We need that here as well, and I think that helps build the excitement for both series. Like whether a national touring series rolls in, it helps support our series, and we're all just trying to entertain people at the end of the day, aren't we?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, and really the national series should hope that you guys do really well because it's a regional series. I hear this, I've heard Carter say it with the World Racing Group. The CEO, he said it, he's concerned about regional racing. So no, I get that. And something else you said that was pretty interesting was time. I'm a stickler for time. I don't think that being at a racetrack for 6 hours, 5 hours is the way to go. It seems like you're also aware and cognizant of length of show, what it is to entertain a fan, to get them in, get them out, give them a show in between.
Yeah, that's it. I think you and I, we have to look at everything as consumers. You and I spend more time consuming than we do producing.
Yeah,
I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
So we're experts at consuming. So it isn't. We don't look too far away from ourselves to know what people would like. Because the question is, what do you like? Well, I don't want to sit at a movie theater for 4 hours. Now, I could probably hang out there for 2 hours back in the day and watch a movie that really drawed me in.
Right.
Got some popcorn, got a big soda, and I'm just sucking away on that Coke and eating popcorn. All the way to the end, I've been on the edge of my seat. Now, if we can take that type of mentality, now today people are living in 4-minute clips, but they'll spend 5 hours looking at 100 4-minute clips of video content on YouTube Reels or in TikTok or whatever they're doing. They'll spend hours doing that, but it's different. The thing is, it's different, and they're hitting these dopamine hits all the way through that process. So we have to move quick, and we got to keep it exciting, precise, and well executed on the time. So that's something we haven't perfected, but it has to be in our psyche of in our mental real estate of focusing on, if I'm in a grandstand, how do we keep them engaged the whole time? And I think you have to have time frames in the night to where you can draw that person back to, I call it, back table, to the merch trailers, to the hot dog stand. Give them a chance to get some popcorn, and coming back out next is this race or whatever, and then move through it quickly. But you have to make it an event, not just a movie. Because a movie really is an event. You just sit there, you do the movie, you walk out.
Right.
Like the zombies. We want to leave excited, and then leave like you leave at a carnival or a amusement park or something like that. They make you walk through that store to buy all that $10 shit. You know what I'm talking about?
Very much so.
So we have to create that type of deal, because these drivers and teams and the tracks need to produce more revenue. They're not $20 for a ticket times $2,000 isn't paying the bills. Like you have to get more creative ways to make it exciting, and over deliver on value. When value exceeds price, people buy things. So we've got to increase the value of our activities and our events. So when that happens, they'll buy more stuff, and second money always supports the first money. So if I buy a ticket, then I spend another $100 on t-shirts, that supports my original decision, and that will force me to come back next time. So I've told my subconscious that this was a great decision. Look at me, I invested more money to support my first decision. I'm buying a ticket. Most race fans have done that. So, but we have to keep coming back, delivering more value. And I don't have the answer to all of that, I think that World of Outlaws do a really good job in that. I think they could do better. We all could do better. They do. I think they probably do the best at the event feel. You got Johnny on the mic. He's rocking the mic all night. He's exciting to listen to. He's a really good job. The biggest groups I've seen fan-wise all year long have been the World of Outlaw races.
Yeah.
As a racer, that's what the first season, my first race back out in the Ford Tank car was that Volusia this year on a half mile. And like, I had no business doing that, but it don't scare me. I don't care. And I went and raced. And I went several of the first World of Outlaw races. Went to Talladega, went to Magnolia. I forget. I went to Tri-City. I forget. Several of them. And I went because it was an event that people were nuts. I mean, they're in the pits. Hell, I'm nobody, Jeremy. I'm signing autographs like I'm a superstar. You know, and you got to get that going. They do a really good job with that. I applaud the World of Outlaws. I love that series. If I was racing today, the full-time racer, that's what I'd be doing for sure.
Well,
that series.
No, and look, I still say they're the closest thing we have to a governing body. They're the closest thing we have to what would be professional right now. I mean, obviously, High Limit. We'll see how that develops. This was their first season. For you next year, what is the plan? Do you have a set number of races? Are you looking at a set number? What's the plan for Maverick?
The current goal is 12 races, and actually, Jill emailed me a few days ago and I haven't responded yet because I don't have a good answer for her. And the question is very similar to what you're asking. Should we leave with the schedule, or do we wait for everybody else's schedules and we fill in between everybody's spots? That way we're not trying to be difficult. I think we leave with a schedule. I think we just put one out right now. This is when we're racing. And because think about it, thank you for talking to me today, because you've got a lot of thoughts out of my mind that need to be clarified. As I'm talking right now, I'm thinking, yes, we should leave with our schedule, because my whole point I shared with you earlier is we're serving a segment that's not being served.
Right.
So the guys that are going to race aren't going to go to the Outlaws anyway. They're not going to go to Port Royal. So why do I care if there's a race at Port Royal on the night that I want to race? I don't. So yes, I will leave with my schedule after this call. I'll tell Jill, yeah, here's the schedule. And we'll be about 12 races in the first. And I'm not saying it can't be more, but right now it'll be 12. It'll be at Wilmington and Putnamville, because those are the two tracks that Jill and Joe operate. Okay. And they can officiate all that stuff. But all the things that we spoke about will be the goals for our events. And our thing is they'll be events. We really got some plans on Grand Marshals. I'm bringing guys like Sammy Swindell back, and Doug Wolfgang, Steve Kinzer, and some other NASCAR guys that I've helped in the past in the NASCAR series. And so, yeah, we're going to make an event. It'll be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Can other tracks come on board? I've had talks with other local tracks around the area, even in Michigan. But once again, remember the core is Kevin doesn't want to drive that far.
You don't want to drive that far.
So we can't get too far from the core.
Well, it's funny you said about the schedule, and there's always pros and cons on either side, whether you're leading with it or you're reacting to other schedules. But I do believe you can lead because you guys are filling a different void. Okay, yeah. You're filling a different want and desire from racers. My suggestion would be, if you're going to build it around the USAC schedule, so you're not interfering with USAC, so you get those guys.
Yeah, that's the concern for sure.
That's the only series that I would worry about building around, because you want to get Logan Seavey. You want to draw Justin Grant. I know Justin Grant wants to do some winged racing because I've talked to him about it. So, I mean, and let's face it, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, winged racing pays better.
Yeah, for sure.
It does.
The shows are going to pay more than the USAC show.
That's what I mean. And then on top of that, the exposure end of it, really non-wing racing is Indiana, maybe a little Illinois, California, which I know that's out of your travel zone. So,
Yeah.
and they come east once a year. They're attended okay, but it's not a financial windfall for USAC to come to PA for Eastern Storm. So, I mean, in my mind, I think you're filling a void, which is one of the reasons I kind of wanted to talk to you about it, was because, especially with this lack of, say, regional racing that could happen here. I mean, let's face it, if we don't know what's going to happen, and Cale Thomas is going to want a place to go.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think, I mean, I've had a chance to meet Cale. He is so we went and raced the All-Star race at Parker Price Miller and myself down Red Hill Raceway in Illinois.
yes.
And Cale was driving I think it was his father's car, their own car.
Yeah.
And he beat those two, they beat the snot out of us. Now, if Cale's listening, you should send this to him. If not, and in the future, send recording. And this is no disrespect, but my if you've seen my stuff, you can't spend more money. It's not possible. If you could, I would have done it. So we're rolling in with $1.5 million rig, 2 of them, and we've got 2 cars in each trailer. You got 4 motors in each trailer. Like this is a touring team, and we have everything a guy who ever wanted to go race dreams about. We have that dream plus 4 more dreams answered in our equipment. So I'm not boasting or bragging, but then Cale comes up in his pickup truck and his broke down trailer, taking his wing off, his car in, comes out and beats our ass.
What?
I mean, it was the guy. He ran Parker down and left him in his dust. And I think he was confused on what happened.
I've often said you could have all the money in the world, it doesn't mean wins. It just helps a little bit.
It helps, and exactly right. It's exactly right. And I remember talking to that kid, and I'm like, man, I'm embarrassed. Why are you embarrassed? I think you whipped our ass. It's racing, and you can do that. I grew up that way. It's like Cale, so I that's why I like that kid, and I appreciate his hustle. His dad is a workaholic. They work really well together, and they had a good chance in that car they raced at the I think it's 23 car, and I don't know that fella who owns that car, but anyway, good chance for him. I'm trying to woo him to come drive some stuff for us. Maybe that'll work out, but he's got a lot of talent. The kid needs a chance. He needs to get into that kind of the good equipment that you talk about that doesn't always win, but you definitely need it if you're going to go on a traveling series.
Yes, absolutely. So, in closing, would you call this series a working man series?
I mean, you brought it on me a little bit. I think the question was, we like call the series a working man
yes,
series.
A working man series.
If that's the question, I think it was. I must have a bad signal. I apologize. If you can hear me okay, the answer is yes. It definitely, that's what the void I'm trying to fill, because I work all day and you work all day, and most sprint car guys work to go race. Like the only reason we get out of bed to go work is to produce revenue to feed our passion to go race. And if I can go race today in any series, anywhere locally or regionally, doesn't matter. If I go to a local racetrack and I can make sense of it. If I spend $3,000 and I can win 4, and I come home at the end of the night, I don't break anything, my tires are okay, and the money I earn racing pays for all my pit passes.
Yep.
And maybe for a tire, like, dude, that's a win. Let's go do it again. Let's do that again. It was fun. And I know, because that's how I grew up racing. And like Cale, man, he's like, that's the most I've ever won. And those people were to the moon and back and I love seeing that happen. And even the guys who ran 4th and like Baylog, he's like, dude, I just won $5,000 per second. I'm like, yeah, dog, high five, come back next year. And so you can make sense of it now. And even for 1,000 for 10th, local night, racing, a local guy racing,
Right.
Earn $1,000 at 10th place. He probably spent more than that to get there. He doesn't know that, but all he counts is the money he spent that night to get to the racetrack. He spent $80 in gasoline. He spent $100 in race fuel. He spent $200 in pit passes. He spent $100 in hot dogs and cokes. And he's up to about $800. He wins $1,000. Like, that's a win, dog. I just won $1 million. He's gonna come back next week and do it again.
Yeah, no,
that's what we're trying to do.
Well, you know, again, I was trying to connect with you. I was able to get your number. I appreciate you coming on the show. And I look forward to seeing what you do next, especially being in Indiana and staying close to where you don't have to drive too far.
I'm sorry, I'm lazy, man. Lazy.
Well, Kevin, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
No problem.